Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. We're back at Trump National Golf Club for the 19th Annual Concours d'Elegance. Let's go enjoy the event. I'm here with J.B. Sanders III. And what did you bring to the Concours today?
Well, Betty, I brought this 1937 Ford Model 78 Cabriolet built by Darren.
I understand this was shown at Pebble Beach also.
It's correct. The car has been at Pebble Beach for Ford's 100th anniversary in 2003, and it was there this year. We were fortunate enough to be second in our class this year at Pebble Beach. It was quite a thrill.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how did you happen to buy this car?
Well, I went to look at a Cord automobile in an old wood and metal building shed, which was not satisfactory, but way across on the other end of the building, this car was sitting there completely covered up with all kinds of junk and what have you. Could barely see it, and so the gentleman that I was with had a key and we could go over and look at it. I was able to move enough stuff to see the Darren on the back of the hubcap, and we contacted the lady that owned it, and about a year or so later I was able to purchase it. So we were very pleased. It is the only Darren that was built on a Ford chassis. It has been accepted by the Classic Car Club of America, and it was the first car that he built when he came back to the United States from Paris. He's very famous for his Packard Darrens for all the movie stars and celebrities, but he also did a number of beautiful cars when he was in Europe for Hibbler Darren and Fernandez Darren and some Rollses and what have you. So it's he was accepted into the Automobile Designers Hall of Fame this last year. So it's a very unusual and a one-on-one automobile. We were very pleased to find it.
Well, you've got quite a gem here.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Certainly. This is a modified 37 Ford. Mr. Darren was noted for his cars that he built for all the movie stars and celebrities, mostly Packard Darrens, but he did build some Rolls Royces, Buicks, and some other things that you'll see on display here today. This car is basically, all of his cars will have the Darren on it in its script, which is basically his signature. This particular automobile has an interesting feature in that in 37, as an option, you could have a locking hood ornament. And so this was on the car when I received it, but it was a Ford option. Looking at the car from side view, you can see that the panels in the hood have been lengthened, which was some beautiful metal work back in those days. The doors are what they call suicide doors. They open to the front. And in 37, almost all of your automobiles had a very straight windshield. This is lean backs and V'd, and the doors were very straight. As you'll notice, this door has a definite slant to it, and that became known as the Darren Dip. And you will see it on all of his cars. It was kind of his trademark. The back of this car is modified. It's basically 36 Ford fenders that have been elongated and what have you, and custom by Mr. Darren. The trunk is not a rumble seat, although it opens in the same manner as it is simply just for access to the back of the car for some storage space. The car is a convertible. The top does fold away, which was very unusual back in 37 to have a hideaway top. This car has some rather unusual features in the dash. The clock was made by George W. Borg, who was the predecessor of Borgwardt. The instruments are basically 37 Ford instruments, and the gear shift had to be highly modified in order to get it to be operational, because your firewall is so far forward that they had to extend it, so it makes it rather interesting to shift. The steering wheel, I have never been able to locate anyone that could tell me exactly what the steering wheel came out of, but it was in the car when we were fortunate enough to find it, and basically the car was in very, very bad condition, and we had some correspondence and photographs from the original owner, and we've tried to put the car back exactly the way it was in 37. An unusual feature of this automobile is that it has a Stewart-Warner Southwind heater. This heater was actually powered by gasoline as opposed to a hot water heater. Between 1932 and about 1940, these heaters were very, very popular in cars, boats, and even airplanes. Okay, this toolbox, we've tried to refinish it where it would match the dash. The tools in this toolbox, basically, we've gathered up over the year, and they all will have the Ford script on them. Ford at one point in time did make a lot of their own tools. A lot of the screwdrivers are the old wooden handled screwdrivers. This was the proper grease gun for the 37 Ford, which we were fortunate to find. And we were able to find a Howard Dutch Darren business card with the address and phone number of his shop when he had Darren of Paris, and we were very fortunate to find this, and we just added that to the toolbox just as a point of interest. This car is powered by a flathead Ford engine, which was very popular back at this point in time. Some unusual features is that it features a high-rise Edelbrock manifold with two Stromberg 97 carburetors. What you're looking at is the flathead Ford engine, 21-stud Ford engine that was very, very popular back in the 30s. These are Stromberg 97 carburetors on an Edelbrock manifold, which was very unusual for that period of time. And this is the installation that pulls the gasoline off of the carburetor down into the heater that you looked at earlier in the interior of the car.
I'm here with Jim Orsberg, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1954 Kaiser Darren.
It sure is an unusual car. Can you tell us a little bit how you happened on it?
Sure, I actually found it. A lady had inherited it from her father, who bought it new in 1955 from Santa Monica, California, and it had been in her garage for 25 years on 4 flat tires, and was more so a home for the rats and cats as far as the interior and the wiring on the car. And she finally decided it was time to let it go. And I had a friend that lived across the street from her who had no idea what it was, and he called me, and I went and looked at it, and I went, holy cow, this car's got sliding doors. So I just had to take it, and I spent 8 years restoring it.
Well, can we have a closer-up look?
Sure, I'd love to show you. This 1954 Kaiser Darren was a design of Howard Dutch Darren, a designer from Santa Monica, California, who designed a lot of Packards and also a lot of Kaiser cars. And this was his one of his unique designs. A lot of people said that the front grille looked like actually a kiss in action, and the front grille was very well noted, and especially the sculpture of the car and the design of the car was so unique. This car was designed actually in 1952, put into production in 1953, and is considered the first American sports car, beating the Corvette by 1 month into production. So that's his claim to fame. It was manufactured for only 1 year only. There were 435 of these originally made, of which there's a known now of 181 that still exist in the world. The color on this car is very unique in the fact that it's called pine tint. They only made the Darren in 4 colors, which was yellow, white, red, and pine tint, which it amazes me that why they didn't call it green, I don't know, but it's still pine tint. Took me 8 years to restore this car, going through it piece by piece. The car actually came with a Willys Hurricane 6 engine with a whopping 93 horsepower. The unique feature of this car is the patented sliding doors. This is the only automobile that ever had doors that actually were on rails that slide into the front fenders. As you can see, it's open in the open position right now. When it's closed, it simply slides back and locks into position where the front of the door comes out to where it's spring-loaded and matches the fender line and the rear fender line. Vice versa, when you open it, when you turn the knob down, it activates the spring, and then you can slide the door forward for ingress and egress. It is really unique. It's a great fun car to drive. I do have a really good story about this car. This car is number 381 out of the 435 that were made. And about the last 60, these were about $3,600 new. And the last 60, the dealers refused to take them off of Henry Kaiser's hands and sell them at the dealerships. So Henry ordered the last 65 cars to be destroyed. And Henry Kaiser's wife found out about it and called Dutch Darren in Santa Monica. And Santa Monica called Henry furious that he was going to destroy his design and his cars. And so what Henry did is Henry offered them for sale to Dutch for the great sum of $1. Dutch bought all 65 cars for $1 and transported them all to Santa Monica, California, and ended up selling them out of Santa Monica over the next 4 years. This is one of those cars. I call it a survivor. The instruments on this car were custom made specifically for the Darren. They came with a oil pressure gauge and an ammeter gauge, along with the tachometer, which in 1954 not many cars were equipped with a tachometer. The transmission in the car is a 3-speed with a manual overdrive. So when cruising on the freeway, you're going very low RPM, and it's very manageable on the freeway. You can actually get it up to 70, 75 miles an hour. The interior on this car is the correct grain Naugahyde with the cotton stitching. It is what they call a tricolor car, which had the original green interior, green top, and the pine tint paint. This being an all fiberglass car, you can see the way the contours of the back of the car and how many different contours they are. This car was actually produced in an inverted mold with hand-laid fiberglass, where the workers would take actually the fiberglass strips and run them through the resin and then roll them out in the mold upside down. Some of the favorite things on this car is that fantail for the exhaust in the back. A lot of people really think that is adorable. And as you can see, this car actually was sold originally, even though it is a 54 model, was sold originally in California in 1956. Because as one of the leftover cars, it actually took Dutch approximately 4 years to sell the last 65 cars out of Santa Monica.
I'm here with Wayne Barnes. And what company do you represent?
I brought cars from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco.
Oh, what a dream job you have.
I enjoy it. We have 175 cars in that collection, all running and driving. We try to keep the best care we can. We use them in our transportation design department.
And what did you bring to the Concours today?
Today we brought this 1938 Buick that's behind me. We brought a 1928 Rolls-Royce, brought a 1954 Kaiser Darren, and we also brought a 1939 Packard. All these cars that we have with us were designed by Dutch Darren, and that's why we're in this class.
Can we have a close-up look?
Sure.
Okay.
We brought our 1938 Buick Fernandez and Darren town car. The front of this car is standard Buick, with the exception of the way they shape the side panels and with these Marshall headlamps. This car was built in Paris in 1938. Dutch Darren was associated with Fernandez, so we have the Fernandez and Darren Buick. We believe it to be the only Buick that was built by Darren, and so of course in Paris it used the Marshall lights. Buicks at that time were very popular over there, and that's why they chose to build on this chassis. Some of the early history on this car that we've researched shows that Miss Alexandria Plankington purchased it new. She was also known as Countess Max de Polska. This car came to the United States from Paris in the late 30s, early 40s, as best as we can tell. It's still in basically the exact same shape it was styling-wise as it left Paris, with the exception of they added fender skirts and the wicker door instead of it being just the painted-in section. This car is representative also of another car that Dutch Darren did that is a Rolls-Royce, one of the first cars he did when he got back to the United States from Paris. That car, the DeFrasso Rolls, unfortunately didn't make it to this event today, but the two cars together are spectacular. This car styling, the way the rear of the car comes down and sweeps off is very representative of those type of cars at that time. The interior of the front of the car is representative of Buick dashboard of the time, except with the chopped windshield, they had to move the wiper motors and the cowl had to be shaped different. But steering wheel, shift mechanism, gauges, speedometer, and the rest of the dash are basically standard Buick fare. This was a limited, so it was the top of the line Buick at the time. The inside of this car in the rear for the passenger's luxury back here had everything you could possibly need. It had windows that divided the front from the back. They're separated, so you have two window cranks, one for each side. It has cigarette lighters, ashtrays, mirrors, courtesy lights, and as I mentioned before, it has the communication device for the driver. This car is also equipped with a clock and a speedometer that they would be able to keep on time for their necessary appointments. And I'm sure this is something that they kept a good eye on. We also have a pair of jump seats that are down here in the floor, so in case there was more people riding, they would have the space to ride in comfort. This Buick was sent to Paris as an engine and chassis and driveline. It still has its original big Buick inline 8-cylinder engine, been restored to factory specification, runs and drives like a dream.
Well, Wayne, we just walked across the field and here's another one of your cars.
Stylistically, it's another Darren car. His involvement in this car was with his partner at the time, Tom Hibbard. This is a 1928 Rolls-Royce. When they did this car, it was right before Tom Hibbard decided to leave Paris, go to General Motors back in the United States. This car was built in Springfield as a chassis, sent to Paris. That's where it had the body built, and then it came back to the United States. The first owner was last name Ortman. Very interesting car.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. This is a larger than 7-liter inline 6-cylinder engine that pulls a lot of weight and has plenty of power to do it. The engines in these Rolls-Royce are a little more complicated than what were the United States versions of cars at that time, but they are really refined and they run extremely efficiently and they have a long life to them. This engine requires a little bit different starting procedure and driving procedure, but they gave you those options and those controls are located, some of them under the hood where you shut the fuel on and off, but most of them are just steering wheel mounted where you can control fuel mixture, ignition timing. It's a little different starting wise than an easy put the key in and turn it. Now we're going to go underneath the hood with my assistant Paul Borgwardt. He is in charge of the museum's collection at the Academy of Art University. He's going to demonstrate how the chauffeur would have started this car for the owner. First, we're under the hood. These vehicles used a vacuum tank instead of a normal mechanical fuel pump. It draws vacuum from the engine to basically pull fuel from the rear of the car. So first Paul will turn on that vacuum tank, which would allow the fuel to drain by gravity to the carburetor. That would have to be done every morning. You would turn that on because at night you've shut it off so you don't drain the vacuum tank. Inside the car, there are a few controls on the steering column that require setting for fuel mixture, ignition timing, and throttle position. You then switch on the ignition and the charging system. Operate the starter with the clutch not depressed because that disengages the flywheel. With the starter button on the floor, off and running for the owner. It has to be done in a certain order or you're not going to move. When you shut these down, they don't shut off quite as quickly as a more modern car. They have a really heavy flywheel on them, so when the ignition is shut down, as we do now, you'll see the engine continues to rotate until the flywheel's mass can stall. Some other features I'd like to point out on this car that were special ordered as the car was equipped new by the Ortmans were these coach lights that would illuminate as you were entering the back of the car. In the back part of the coach, this flooring is mink. It's original, and by and large the entire interior back here is as this car was equipped when it was new. This car was also equipped with the sterling silver smoking set and the sterling silver libation set. This car is equipped similar to our Buick with communication from the rear compartment to the driver's left ear. During the past several years, we've used this car in San Francisco to escort the president of the school to the symphony and the opera. This car is very fitting to take to an event like that. This car is equipped with a luggage rack that supports the trunk. These cars did not have a lot of interior room in the back of the car that would have allowed for trunk space. It would have robbed space from the passengers, and as you looked in it earlier, there's a lot of legroom. That's because they pushed the seat back all the way to the rear of the car. The trunk would be used if they were taking longer trips for overnight events. It makes it nice to have the trunk on the outside of the car. It makes it a lot more difficult for the chauffeur to see how much fuel is in the car because these cars' fuel gauge was mounted right to the top of the gas tank, which is located right underneath their trunk. The things that set these coach-built cars apart from the way it is today of going into a dealership and being able to pick out a car, where they will tell you if you want a sunroof, you're going to get a certain radio and a certain wiper system. They've packaged things. Back when these cars were built, there was a lot more time spent on individuality. So this car, when it started as a chassis in Springfield, was an order that was specific for a custom body that Darren with Tom Hibbard would design over in Paris. The Ortmans would have picked the body color, where they wanted the pinstriping, the options in the car, and there was communication that we have some of those letters still that explained what type of material to use on the seating. These cars were much more personalized than anything we're ever going to see again, and it makes them fascinating because of the history of the people that connected with these cars.
I'm here with Derby Allstone, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1939 Coachcraft Mercury Roadster.
And how long have you owned this car?
I actually bought it back in 1986 against my parents' wishes, and it was a complete basket case. I was 16 years old at the time, and I had kept the car 20 years before I started the restoration, which I completed in 6 months.
Oh, it's beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the car, how you found it?
Yes, it was actually in a Lemming packing plant in South Nepal with four flat tires and a bunch of stuff all over the top of the car. It was rust out all the way around, and again, that's why my parents did not want me to buy it, but I went ahead and bought it anyway.
Oh, it's magnificent. Can we have a closer-up look?
Yes.
And you show us some of the features of the car?
Sure. This is a 1939 Coachcraft Mercury Roadster. It started off as a 39 Mercury. It has a 40 Mercury grille, 39 Mercury bumpers and fenders, and a 40 Mercury engine. As you can see, the body is highly customized and built by Coachcraft, as with the emblem at the bottom. It's also known as the doorless wonder, having no doors and you're able to hop into the car. The car finishes off with a jump seats inside and 39 Mercury rear fenders. As you can see, the doorless feature of the car, and there's a 40 Mercury dash that has been modified to fit inside the car. The steering wheel has been lowered because of the bodies being so low. The car has no top, but does have a rear compartment to access not only the spare tire, but the two jump seats that are facing inward inside the car. The rear of the car is made from a 39 Mercury rear bumpers and 39 Mercury rear fenders, but the whole body is custom out of steel. As part of the restoration process, I replaced all of the fenders as well as 50% of the sheet metal. So from here all the way down is all new sheet metal that was hand formed to make the shape.
Derby, what's it like going down the road in this car after putting so much TLC into it?
It's pretty neat. You feel like you can touch the road as you go by. People often ask me if they think I'm going to fall out or the passenger's going to fall out because there's no doors. But it's kind of like a motorcycle. You just stay right onto the seat. I'm here with Bill Stoessel, the son of the founder of Coachcraft. And he and his son are still operating Coachcraft to this day in San Paulo, California. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about the connection between Coachcraft and Hollywood?
Coachcraft started out in Hollywood. It actually was a spin-off from Darren. Darren closed up and sent the production back to Connorsville, Indiana in 1939. Coachcraft started in late 39, incorporated in 1940. With the three partners, they went down to Melrose, where the design center is today, 8671 Melrose Avenue, and Lynn Salter owned a machine shop down there, was very good friends. They put up a tent next to the machine shop on a dirt lot, and this was the first car that was actually built under a tent. And this was the Paul Planette, well known as the Doorless Wonder.
What are the other Coachcraft cars that have showed up at this event?
Well, you have this car, then we got the Yankee Doodle Roadster, which is a little blue roadster down there. And then there's the Harrington Ford wagon, which was basically a modified Mercury four-wheel drive, and he was actually a bird photographer, so special luggage rack, water tanks, all the amenities. And Coachcraft did more than just custom cars. They built wheelchair conversion cars. They built cars, whatever people wanted on wheels, they would do it, and when nobody else would.
Can you tell the story of you and your father and your son seeing my car back in the early 70s?
Yeah, the first time I saw this car, we had a phone call, and it was down in Temecula. And the guy told us that he had this car, so my dad said, okay, let's take a ride down there and see the car. So when we got it down there, we were down on some country roads, and we're going down this country road, and I said, well, there's the address, and I pulled over, and there was a ditch going up towards the house, and this car was laying on its side in the ditch. My dad looked at the car, I looked at the car. My dad says, well, I don't think we'll bother the people, but he says, you know what? It'd be nice if we did get the windshield off the car, because it's solid brass.
Well, thanks a lot, Bill, for your time. I appreciate it.
I'm here with Dave Holmes. Are you enjoying the Concours today?
This is beautiful. I'm usually just at Woody shows, and this is special to see all these other different kind of cars out here.
Well, your car is drawing a crowd.
Yeah, pretty usually does.
What did you bring to the Concours today?
This is my 1947 Mercury station wagon, and the reason it's special is it has a original Marmon Harrington all-wheel drive conversion. And the reason it's in this California design class is because it was camperized by the Coachcraft Company of Hollywood back in the early 50s.
How did you happen to buy this car? What's a little history on it?
Well, I got it from a guy who did the woodwork on another Ford Woody I had, and in 1990 he got in trouble with Las Vegas and had to sell something. So he called me up and said, you better come look at this one. So I couldn't stand it, I had to do it.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure. Front of the car is basically stock Mercury. It's just lifted up higher because it's a four-wheel drive, and as you can see, it's pretty stout up here. It's not moving. But the most interesting part is what Coachcraft did to the inside of the car to camperize it. First, as you can see, it hasn't got an old 3-speed transmission up here. It's got a 1.5-ton truck 4-speed, no synchronizers. You double clutch or you just don't go anywhere. The transfer case for the four-wheel drive is right here. Coachcraft put in a little drinking fountain here. Watch this. So there's original 1949 water in there, I think. Inside, first thing you notice is there's a cot hanging up in here, which will set up inside if you take everything out of the back or outside. Instead of the 3 seats like all the other wagons have, we got these storage boxes here. Stainless steel cork insulated ice box. behind which is a water tank, holds about 8 gallons of water. And like that's the one that's pumping out of the front, and there's a tap for the water in the back here too, a little spigot. They also added these fold-down steps, which are very strong, to access the roof. And in a normal Woody wagon, you couldn't stand on the roof. This one has 6 extra ribs across the roof and 2 layers of oak slats on the top, so it's very strong. The man that had it built could stand up there and take pictures and carry piles of stuff on his expeditions. One of the nicest parts of the Woody wagons is this rear tailgate and the upper lift gate. It's just beautiful woodwork. It's very distinctive.
We have a family affair going here with Fred and Chris. What did you bring to the Concours today?
Well, we brought 3 cars today, and this is one of them, the Maverick Sportster. Chris and I collect American sports cars of the 50s, so we brought that along with 2 other cars.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the car behind us here?
Sure. This car was built by a man named Sterling Gladwin Jr. in 1952, and he built the car for himself, and he built it on a 1939 LaSalle chassis. But as soon as he got it done, everybody saw it and they just fell in love with it. So he formed a company called Maverick Motors of Mountain View, California, and he started producing these cars built brand new on Cadillac Eldorado chassis with Cad Eldorado engines. And so that he could advertise that car and sell the car to other people, he took and upgraded this car in 1954 and put the Cadillac Eldorado engine and all the other different things that he had on it at the time.
How'd you happen to acquire this car?
Well, actually, I collect American sports cars, and so it's a theme of mine, and somebody told me about the car, and usually when you are known for something like that, the cars find you more than you finding the cars.
Sounds like a wonderful hobby, Chris.
Yeah, we love it. I had no choice but to be in the hobby because they named me Christopher Allen Roth, which my initials are CAR, so it was the beginning of a great thing.
Oh, what a wonderful thing to bring into the family and to have this as a family affair.
And my wife is involved in it too. She does all the upholstery, and Chris and I do the paint and the mechanics on the cars. We don't have anything done. It's all home done restorations.
So it truly is a family affair.
Yes, it is.
Could we have a closer up look?
A closer up look? Absolutely, you
All
can.
right.
This car was a fiberglass car that originally started being built with no hood. And that's the reason for these interesting looking panels that are on the car here. That was the way you checked your water and oil. And if you wanted to do anything else, the entire body lifted up like a funny car. Now, the parts that they added to this fiberglass design were naturally stock parts off of other cars. The front bumper is 41 Cadillac. The grill is 39 LaSalle, 2 of them cut in half and welded together. The parking lights are 49 Mercury. The headlight rings are 49 to 51 Lincoln. Since it is a Maverick, they built that sculpture of the horse, and that is unique to this car. And it's the only one of the 11 built that I think still has its hood ornaments.
It's a very unique looking car from the side as well as from the back. You can see that there's chrome accents along the bottom and around the wheel wells, but that accompanies this sort of swooping look on the side, which actually dovetails into a boat tail in the back. That's really made possible with the fiberglass that was used on the car. And as we continue to the back of the car, you can see that you can see the distinctness of the boat tail. And with the boat tail, it leads you right into the bumpers, which were off of Cadillac in the early 50s. And it has 40s tail lights and dual exhaust on the back. Okay, now we'll take a look at the interior of the car. You can see the turned copper dash, which is very unique for the car. The instruments are off of Studebaker and also off of Packard and other cars of that era. And the way you get into this car is you actually have to hop over because there's no door. Quite a feature for the day. Something else I'd like to point out is that there's no windshield wipers on the front of the car and no top. It's a fair weather car. As you can see here, there's custom hubcaps on there, and it's actually a Bronco rider on top of a Maverick, so classic for the car.
One of the interesting things about this car is even though he only built someplace between 6 and 11 of the cars, he actually put out a sales brochure on the car, and it was a 3-page fold-out sales brochure, double-sided, and he would go from show to show, car show to car show, and he would show this to the people that were looking at the car when he took this car there, and that's how he sold his cars. And it was kind of interesting also that the company stayed in business from 1954 to 1968. He gave up the name Maverick in 1968, and Ford took it over in 1970, and so he didn't end up getting any royalties for that name that he had done. And they asked him if he was upset about that in one magazine article, and his answer was he wouldn't have been so upset except for the little tin can they put the name on. This is another one of the cars we brought today, another American sports car. This is a 1952 Woodill Wildfire. And this car was slated to be Willie's sports car. And when it was built by a man named Woody Woodall, who was a Willie's Dodge dealer in Downey, California. And he really wanted a Jaguar to drive, and his mechanic said, "We are not going to let you drive a Jaguar because they're too hard to work on and they're too hard to find parts for." So they told him about a man by the name of Bill Tritt, who built a body called Glasspar. He was also a boat builder, and he went to see him and saw that the lines of this car are very similar to a Jaguar XK120. So he fell in love with it, and he decided to build it with all Willys running gear. All the suspension, the engine, transmission, and rear end are all Willys, so that the car could be easily serviced at any Willys dealership. And he even made a deal with Willys Motors, and this was supposed to become their sports car. The problem was we were in a very bad fiscal time, our country was at that time, and Willys went belly up. And when they went belly up, they merged with Kaiser Frazer, and Kaiser Frazer had already made a deal with Dutch Darren to build the Kaiser Darren, so this car ended up not having a home. So after he had built 3 for the first year and about 15 for the second year, he ended up going into kit cars, which he called the 24-hour sports car, and you could put it on a 39 Ford chassis in 24 hours, and he had it on, for those of you senior members, Art Baker's You Ask For It.
Okay, I'll show you a little bit more about the car. Up front you can see that it's got some very distinctive lines. Most of that's created by the fiberglass. In the front of the fiberglass you can see there's a hood scoop. That's distinctive compared to the Glasspar, which was a similar car to this. Glasspar was the one that manufactured the solid grille in the front, and the bumper is from a Willys. As the fiberglass swoops back, you can see that look that's very similar to a Jaguar that we were mentioning earlier. And also those 2 humps in the dash, those were the thought and design of Woodill. And you can see here from the back of the car, it also has Willys bumpers. The taillights are also Aero Willys of the area, and it almost has a fin-like look in 1952, which was well ahead of the craze by the end of the 50s. Okay, now we'll take a closer look inside the car. And as you look inside, you can see the 2 humps on the dash, which were a distinctive feature brought to it by Mr. Woodill. And all the gauges and all the running gear, the steering wheel is all Willys. As you can see by me being on my knee, it's very hard to get inside this car. It's probably made for somebody about 5'4".
The engine in here is a Willys engine, but if you'll notice, there's 3 carburetors on it. And the 3 carburetors Woody wanted to have made to put on this car to give it more power, because this was only a 90 horsepower engine. So he put a hot cam and he put these 3 carburetors in it. And the way I came about them is when Howard Miller, the man who did all the work on this car, came to my house one time to visit. He brought this as kind of like a bottle of wine you'd usually bring to a person's house, and gave me this 3 carburetor manifold, so I was sure to incorporate that with this first Woodill that was ever built.
I'm here with Aaron Weiss. It's good to see you again, Aaron.
Well, likewise, Betty. It's great to be here at Palos Verdes Concours.
How many cars did you bring to the Concours this year?
We brought 4.
What all did you bring?
Well, we brought the car behind me, a 1942 Chrysler Town & Country barrelback station wagon, and a 1962 Jaguar, a 1931 Cadillac V16 Sport Phaeton, and a 1942 Packard Darren Victoria.
See, I learned from hearing your wife last year, I better ask how many you brought.
Well, we have a soft spot here, so we loaded up the wagons, brought them down.
Can you again tell us what we have behind us here?
This is a 1942 Chrysler Town & Country barrelback station wagon. It's one of about 996 built, of which only 15 remain in existence today.
Is there a story behind why you bought this car?
I liked it, and that's always a good reason. I bought the car because I wanted a Woody, and there were so few of them. Production was low, survival rate was low, and it looked like it had some upside potential in terms of appreciation.
Can we have a close-up look?
Absolutely. This is a 1942 Chrysler Town & Country barrelback station wagon, and it was the last model Chrysler that was built prior to the termination of domestic production in World War II. So this is the last model before the war. And if you look at the first models after the war in 1946 and on, they almost look identical because during that 4-year period there was no money or the availability to do any design work. So when the war ended, they just picked up the pieces that they had and continued to make cars. Now this car was interesting because it was predominantly sold in the New England area for the purposes of hauling people from the train station to various resorts up through New England. And this is a 9-passenger station wagon. They also made a 6-passenger, but the lodges and the bed and breakfasts and places, the inns, preferred the 9-passenger, and it also has the luggage rack on top so everybody could throw their luggage on and get taken to their resort of choice. These cars were equipped with a 6-cylinder flathead engine, and the fluid drive was the precursor to an automatic transmission. You had to use the clutch to shift between in and out of first gear, and of course reverse, but going in the second and third was just a matter of taking your foot off the gas a little bit, getting the RPMs down, and automatically the transmission would shift from second to third or third to second. So for its time, it was a rather revolutionary engineering development. The interior of the car is rather interesting because in 1942 plastic had not been entirely invented, and so all of these panels are all Bakelite, which is a precursor to plastic. So it's kind of like a heavy petroleum-based product, but not quite plastic like we thought of it, and it's all faux marble. And that's kind of interesting. You can see that the dashboard is very 40s Art Deco. In the center you have your radio, and all of your control knobs underneath. The car didn't have it did not have a choke. It was rather an automatic choke, so we have all the heater controls and radio and lights beneath the radio there. And in the far corner one can see the controls for the spotlight, because probably in 1942 there weren't a whole lot of street lights everywhere. The car is built under a wood frame body, and all of these panels are mahogany with oak mullions, and looking inside the door, again you have mahogany door cards, and so there is no steel in these doors whatsoever. The only steel's in the major frame and the roof line. In the back seat, the headliner has ribs like a boat. It is a 9-passenger, and so there's a fold-up seat right in the middle here that folds down to accommodate the extra 3 passengers. And now for the piece de resistance is the rear of the car, which is why it's called a barrel back. It resembles a beer barrel, and doors open. They're barnyard type doors, and in the back you can see we've got some fitted luggage and room for to store things. Again, the car is all wood frame, and you can see the finger joints and how the wood is all fitted. Each car was built by hand, and the compound hinges. So it's really an interesting car, not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but also from this engineering standpoint, to make all this fit and work together.
I'm here with John Cary. And what did you bring to the Concours today, John?
1929 Rolls-Royce shooting brake.
And what is a shooting brake?
Well, a shooting brake is a subset of World Woodies. It was in England, and it was designed to take the guns and the dogs out to the hunt. Sometimes Woodies are known as estate wagons. Sometimes they're station wagons, because in Australia the farms or ranches were called stations. And sometimes they were called station wagons here because they were to take your luggage down to the station, the train station. So there's all kinds of different Woodies, but the shooting brake is particularly English.
And how did you happen to buy this car? What drew you to it? I understand there's quite a story.
Well, I'm crazy enough to be kind of enamored of English cars, and I was without one in 1978, and I saw this car at a scrap paper dealer in San Jose, California, and had to find out more about it. He was willing to sell it, and I was crazy enough to buy it.
What shape was it in, John?
It was a good restoration project. It was missing a lot of things and had some things done wrong, but it really had not been destroyed. So it was a workable project.
Can we have a closer-up look?
Sure, you bet. Glad to. Okay, I have here today at the Palos Verdes Concours a 1929 Rolls-Royce 20 horsepower shooting brake. Now, Rolls-Royce did the chassis. Prior to World War II, all coachwork was custom built and ordered to the customer specification. So the Rolls-Royce part was the chassis that is covered by the coachwork. This coachwork is shooting brake, as I said, and it was really a utility type vehicle. If you had a sporting event, you could take anything that was necessary out to the field, including lunch, and usually the chauffeurs took care of that. The 20 horsepower thing is an underrating that was basically cheating, because all of the manufacturers underrated the horsepower for the reason of taxation and registration. It really is like a Chevy six-cylinder. It's about 110 horsepower, but with refinements. This car actually has roller rockers at the camshaft in 1929, as well as a lot of aluminum. But the crowning feature, of course, for a Rolls-Royce is the German silver radiator and nickel mascot. German silver is high nickel content stainless steel, but it will tarnish, so it has to be polished all the time. But if you keep it right, you can see the results as you see here. I did a personal 8-year restoration on this, and I'm particularly proud of some of the things that I made. I had to completely rebuild the front wings, as the English call it, and I had to restore the license plate, which is a 1929 California plate. And of course the wire wheels were a particular challenge. The windshield, as you can see, is a fold-out windshield. So with the dual side mounts and the fold-out windshield and a sunroof, you have quite a sporting vehicle. Of course, it has more lights than it did when it was original, because we need more than just a single tail light in the back, which they had in the British colonies. It has to have the stop lights and turn signals and all of that. This is a 5-door wooden wagon, and the front doors are pretty much normal, although it is right-hand drive. And it's kind of tight getting in on this side, so normally the driver will get in on the left side, which is normal for America, but then he has to slide all the way to the right for the right-hand steering wheel. This also has right-hand shift, so you don't have to be shifting with your left hand. As you can see, the back of the car is also wood. This is the 5th door of the 5-door wagon, and the features on here are it has opening windows, so that when you have the windshield tilted forward or the sunroof open, the wind coming in has a place to escape. As you can see, one of the nice features of the woodwork that the cabinet builder did on this car is all curved lines. So they're all compound curves, and fortunately this wood came to me in fairly good shape. It just had to be sanded and finished on the outside. This is a right-hand drive car being made for the English market, and the nice feature about this right-hand drive car is that they also put the gear shift on the right-hand side as well as the handbrake, so that you're doing everything normally with your right hand rather than having to shift with your left hand. Included in the controls on the steering quadrant are rich lean, advanced retard, and increase in the throttle for idle RPM. We also have full switches for the lights and a starting carburetor handle, and also a handle that opens or closes the front vanes on the radiator so that you can warm the car up quicker on a cold morning by closing the vanes. This car is a pleasure to drive. It's very quiet, like all Rolls-Royces. It takes some getting used to learning how to shift. You can't be in a hurry. Normally you would think that you would have to shift from one gear to the next really quickly, but this just seems to like it if you take your time and relax and just move it from one position to another. The right-hand drive is really not a big deal. You really don't notice that. It just seems normal as long as you're shifting with your right hand. Now on the inside, all of the wood is brand new, as well as the leather. The sunroof and the headliner are all leather and wood. We have some of the big tools in the bottom here that you might want to look at. Every custom coach builder, in conjunction with the customer's request, included various tools that were provided by Rolls-Royce, and these are the big tools for the major events like oiling, air pressure, and or changing tires. On the upper left-hand corner is the wrench that you take the hubs off with. The lower left-hand corner is the jack. The upper right-hand corner is the oiler, and the lower right-hand corner is the foot pump for adding air to your tires.
I'm here with Jim Powers, and this is quite an event today.
Yes, it's a wonderful show.
And what did you bring to the Concours today?
This 1961 Thunderbird.
I understand you were involved with the design of this car.
60 years ago, I did the original clay model that eventually became this car. This car was a complete departure from previous Thunderbirds, and many people felt that it was too radical. In fact, it got the nickname of being the Rocket Bird. And of course, the interior of this car is very unique as well, with the coved areas for the driver and the passenger. Very unusual and very different for the time. Along with the whole Rocket Bird concept, you can see the tail lights and bumper combination are these huge blast tubes. And again, very radical, and nothing like that had ever been done before on a production car. And when they light up, it's certainly very dramatic to see the red rocket blast come from the taillights. Another feature that was very unique on this car was that the door handle was actually a part of the trim, and you can see that there's no conventional door handle. Another unique feature about this car, which appeared on this car and none other, was the swing-away steering wheel, which allowed easier entry and exit. You can see the steering wheel pushes completely aside. As I mentioned before, this car was considered very radical, and if you see the 1960 Thunderbird, you can see the great difference from 1960 to this 1961.
I'm here with Barry Burstein. And what'd you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1969 Camaro ZL1.
How'd you happen to buy this car?
Well, I looked for many, many years until I was able to find this particular car.
And are there some special features that you'd like to show us?
Yes, there are. This is a 1969 Camaro ZL1. It is one of 69 ZL1s ever built by General Motors. The thing that makes it different than all other cars other than the ZL1s is that it has an all-aluminum engine which develops almost 600 horsepower. It has a 12.5 to 1 compression ratio, and it has a 411 positive traction rear end. One of the interesting things about this car is the fact that it has an all transistorized electronic ignition, which is very rare for a car of that vintage. And when I restored this car, I wanted to make sure that I brought it back to life exactly the way it was when it came from the factory. These plug wires are Packard Bell plug wires that are transistorized wires specifically for this make and model of car. This car came from the factory with a radio delete option, which meant that it has no radio, it has no power steering. The car was built by General Motors strictly to race. When the car was built and it was new, it was drag raced extensively in the Northwest, and the car has 695 miles on it. When I got the car, it had a roll cage in it and was just actually a factory drag strip car.
I'm here with Greg Joseph, and what did you bring to the Concours today?
I brought a 1970 Plymouth pink Hemi Cuda.
How did you happen to find this car?
I found this car up in Quebec, Canada back in 1985, and I was purchasing the car for the late Otis Chandler, who owned the LA Times, and put it in our collection. And when I found it, it was the first of the two pink cars that was found. What you're looking at under the hood is a Monster 426 Hemi motor. The heads are hemispherical. This was Chrysler's top-of-the-line motor to race in NASCAR and drag racing, and it literally destroyed the competition. This particular motor in this particular car is one of 652 production figures in 1970 in a Cuda. The hood, which you see here, is called a shaker hood because it vibrates when the motor is on. So it shakes, and so that's why they called it from the factory a shaker hood. 426 cubic inches, 425 horsepower. Stock. With headers, it's running well over 500 horsepower. Dual carburetor. This car was prolific on the street and street racing, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, in drag racing and NASCAR racing. Two unique features on this 70 Hemi Cuda are the gills, as you notice down here under the door and following back to the quarter, and also the rare optioned hockey stripe that says Hemi on it. And these are two features on this particular car. This is optional. Most of the Hemi Cudas did not come with the Hemi hockey stripe, as it was called, because it's shaped like a hockey stick.
Thank you for joining Peninsula Seniors Out and About here at the 19th Annual Concours d'Elegance. I'm Betty Wheaton. See you next time.